All right. Hey, Noble, how are you doing?
Jerry, what's up, homie? It's great to see you, brother.
Yes, yes. I finally got the signature Noble entry into the podcast episode, everybody. So for those of you watching on YouTube, you just saw it. For those listening in on everything else, audio, you got to go check out our YouTube channel because then you'll see what Noble just did. I see him do it on his show. I see him do it on Llama Lounge. I see him do it on everywhere he's been. So Noble, awesome to have you on here. Where are you calling in from?
Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Awesome. Good hiking up there. I'm trying to convince my wife to let me go up there.
You guys got to come visit.
Yeah, because Texas right now, it's summertime. It is hot. It's like if I were to go hiking right now, it's like find a sauna, walk around that sauna like for 12 miles. And it's like, yeah, you die in half a mile. It's like breathing water. So
that's good. That's right. That's right.
Oh man. So you and I know each other through Lima Charlie Network, and it's a group of podcasters. Most of us are veterans. Some of them are active duty Air Force. We forgive them. And we even have a civilian who we love more than the other guys. So Shay Sparks from The Power of Investing in People. And it's a great group of guys, very supportive. And Noble, you've got one of the shows, EQ Gangster. And, it's always neat. Like I listened to your show and it just kind of hit me like one day. I'm like, wait, this guy talks about emotional intelligence like every week, tells his story about how emotional intelligence became a big part of his life. And then I'm like, I have a show here that's about helping listeners pull themselves out of their rut, whether it's in their faith, their family life, maybe it's their fitness on either a spiritual, emotional, or physical level, their personal finances, or just their outlook on future possibility. And all these things take some level of emotional intelligence. And what if our rut is because we don't have the self-awareness of how we're bringing ourselves to the table, into relationships, into business, and so on. And I'm like, man, if only I knew somebody who talked about emotional intelligence. And then like you popped up on my feed. I'm like, duh, Jerry, you've known Noble for about a year now. Get him on the show. So I'm glad you said yes. You just got back into the country from a mission trip. And so the timing of this interview is perfect. So thank you. All that to say, thank you for joining us right now. So there you go. That
pleasure to be here, man. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, Jerry.
Awesome. Now you did some time in the Army. Is that right?
I did. That's exactly right.
That's why I like you, because Army,
that's right.
Not like Coast Guard or anything, right, Brandon?
Yeah, I was infantry. I was in the 82nd Airborne Division. I went to the Hudson Valley Home for Wayward Children, also known as West Point. And then I went to the Army's elite weight loss program. I need to go through that again, called Ranger School.
Yes.
And then
one meal a day, every day, right?
And then Airborne School. And then again, I was stationed in the 82nd as an infantry officer at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Yeah. And Ranger School is no joke. Like, and this is coming from a guy who did not go to Ranger School, but I've got a lot of friends who went. I got a buddy who he was a medic for the Ranger School. So he was like with 4th Ranger Battalion at Fort Benning. And so his job was taking care of the trainees who like fell off of obstacles and stuff. And he invited my family out to see one of the graduations. And I just thought the graduation alone, they make you show off your skills. So you're like on like 100-foot pole going across a cable and dropping into that pond. I'm like, that's after they've already done the things they had to do to graduate. Like, this is just for fun now. They're like, tap the Ranger tab and fall in the water. I'm like, screw that, man. No.
That's right.
I'm convinced the show Survivor was inspired maybe by Rangers because you got your physical feats you got to go through, right?
Right.
You got your training, like your skills and tasks you got to pull off and show and demonstrate. But then there's this like social element where you vote each other off the island, right? It's
right. Peer reviews.
Yes. Right. And so it's like, who's a good leader here? This guy. Well, who's a sucky leader who needs to be out of here? That guy. And they all point the guy out. It's like, it doesn't matter how good you are. If you suck at building relationships, you're out.
That's right.
And so how much of that carries over into the work you do today with emotional intelligence? Like, what is emotional intelligence? In case somebody really doesn't know what that is, let's start.
Sure.
There.
Yeah. So emotional intelligence, I'm going to use a couple of different layers of definition. So my Noble's definition of emotional intelligence is the ability to acknowledge, identify, process, and manage your own emotions and the emotions of others. One of the old industry models of emotional intelligence is comprised of 4 different areas: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and social management.
Those are the 4 I'm familiar with. So I was trying to make it an acronym out of the thing you said first, but all I came up with was APM. So it's like aim with a P. Aim with a P. So I don't know if I can make that work for you, but I'll try.
That's great. I love it.
And so that's essentially what emotional intelligence is. But why is it important? Like, other than getting through Ranger school,
that's a great question. So the reality is, now this is all coming from being emotionally clueless for 4 decades.
Yeah.
And I'm not exaggerating. So I just started my emotional growth journey, my emotional fitness program 4 years ago. Every day for the past 4 years, I've been very intentional at emotional fitness programs. So EQ, emotional intelligence, our emotional health, our emotional fitness impacts every single area of our life. And even physiologically. So every single decision that we make in our lives, regardless of the area, regardless of the area of life, that kind of thing, every single decision we make goes through the emotion center of our brain before it ever hits the logic center of our brain. Whether or not you're aware of that process happening, it is happening. So even for my hardcore analytical, logical, process-minded people, even for them, every decision they make goes through their emotion center of their brain first, and then to the logic center of their brain. Yeah. So it literally impacts every single decision we make.
Yeah, a guy named Dr. Kahneman got a Nobel Prize in 2012, proving that no matter who you are or what you are, if you're human, you will process things on an emotional level first, no matter what. Then that's logically, right. Yeah. It's in Crucial Conversations, they call that the lizard brain, right? Yeah, it's that reaction to things, and the key is to get. And Malcolm Gladwell talks about it in his book Blink, that you're making decisions within a split second. Yes. And a lot of that is based off of past experiences tied in with emotion. And that emotion's that strong part that gets you to make a decision before you even know the information that is being presented. And so, yeah, if what's at risk if you're not aware of that process happening?
Oh, man, that's an excellent question. So relationships, finances, I mean, think about every major area of your life, every big rock in your life, that's at risk, right? My faith was totally impacted, hindered by my lack of emotional health and emotional intelligence. My marriage, my parenting, my finances, my fitness, my business, everything was negatively impacted, hindered, limited by my lack of emotional maturity and all my emotional dysfunction. Yeah. Absolutely 100%.
How would you say that your faith was impacted by emotional intelligence?
Okay, so there is, in fact, I've got it right here. There's a book I strongly recommend folks check out. For those on YouTube, you can see it. For those on the podcast, it's called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality by Pete Scazzaro. The tagline throat punches me to this day. It is ridiculously powerful and really describes my life in a nutshell prior to my emotional fitness. The tagline of the book is, the title is Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. The tagline is, it is impossible to be spiritually mature while remaining emotionally immature.
Yeah.
And that was the story of my life. I've got sections of the Bible memorized. I've been to church since I just about popped out of the womb. I've done all the right churchy stuff.
Yeah.
100% my faith was self-sabotaged because of the emotional window that I viewed God through was from a 3-year-old perspective.
Right. Yeah.
And that's how my emotional health and emotional intelligence impacted and or limited my faith.
Yeah. It's like, how are you going to say you're mature if you know all the scriptures, you go to every church service, but the moment you walk out the church doors, you're cussing out your kids in the car, or you're cussing out somebody in the parking lot because they cut you off trying to get out to go to Cracker Barrel, or I don't know why Cracker Barrel, but it's just because for my family, we were going to tacos. We're getting tacos. Heck yeah, right? I miss Cancun Mexican restaurant, by the way, but I'm back. I'm back, everybody. It's in Corpus Christi. They got this green sauce. Take my word for it. It's awesome.
Bro, I've got a tattoo of a taco. So listen, I'm into tacos.
Awesome. Well, I know you got like a taco emoji. I still haven't found on any social media platform. But you have a taco emoji, and I'm like, I need a taco emoji.
And a YouTube video called just if you want to learn some deep stuff about life and tacos, just YouTube Noble's Taco Talk. And nice. you will discover some deep stuff about life you've never known before about tacos.
Nice. That will definitely be linked in the show notes. That is very important to include. Right up there with the green sauce from Cancun.
That's right,
guys.
Yes.
So yeah, like what's the point of like memorizing scripture, going to every sermon if you're going to judge the next person you come across because they're a teen mother or because they used to do drugs when they were younger or currently doing drugs, or they just got a divorce? Like, what's the point if you're going to be judging others because of a knee-jerk reaction you've got, some deep-seated biases even. So, yeah.
Well, and here's another way that it 100% impacted me as well. So I was, because of my people-pleasing addiction that I had for 4 decades, I was a pretty good rule follower, so I would follow all the rules of the Bible.
Yeah.
And I was a good Christian, right? Whatever that is, right? I would follow all the little rules and stuff. And then all the promises of God because of the dark side of the people-pleasing addiction. Well, I mean, there's people-pleasing addiction is all bad, but there were some behaviors that would look good to people, but it was all coming from a place of an addiction of people pleasing.
Yeah.
But because the one of the downside behaviors was well, there's multiple, but one of them, two of them. One is I always looked for the validation and approval of everyone else around me rather than my identity being in the Lord, in Christ. I would tell you, oh, Jerry, oh no, my identity is the Lord. Oh, you just don't understand how holy and righteous I am. But all my behaviors were trying to get approval and validation from everyone around me. That's number one. Number two is because of my insecurity and my self-hatred and my self-condemnation and my imposter syndrome and all those other dysfunctions, when God would give a promise in the Bible, right? All the promises of God, I was not ever able to embrace them and own them and act on them because I'm like, oh no, I've got too much sin and God's grace is for everybody but me because I'm too sinful. I'm too evil. And so I was never able to, I mean, think about this, Jerry, how many legit Bible believing believers that love Jesus are actually walking in the promises of God and living a victorious life in every area of their life. Well,
yeah,
a very, very small percentage, right? And I would argue that some of the reason of that is because of some sort of emotional dysfunction that is impacting their spiritual walk.
Yeah. I was just talking in fact, it was the episode that just came out recently with Brian Crum, and he's talking about how, if we look at the power of our words, the nots in our lives, I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. But if you remove the knots that hold us back or tie us up, now you've got, I am smart enough. I am pretty enough. I am good enough. I am loved enough. I am loved. It's just like, it's just, anyway, that's what you got me thinking about just now. But yeah, there's something emotionally that if we're not aware of it, it's either going to hold us back from those promises or sabotage ourselves. Like, how many people do we know that gets fired from job after job because the moment they get some sort of critique from anybody, especially their boss, I've got to stand by my principles and tell them where I am on this. And I am not bending whatsoever. Like, that's a strong emotional response that says, I am right. I will prove I'm right by standing firm and telling my boss he or she is an idiot. And in the end, one of you's got to give. And, if you put your boss in the position where it's like, well, now I've got like team culture stuff to protect, I've got emotional safety to protect in everybody else on the team. This person just acted way out of line. It's like, I'm sorry, but no, you cannot pick up a chair and threaten to hit anybody with it. You're fired. It's like, I know people who get fired from jobs in their 30s and 40s because they have to have their outbursts. They have to be right. And they haven't figured out that there's some deep-seated reaction to just a word, a phrase, somebody's name. And so, relationships at home are affected. Your faith walk with Jesus is affected. Your career or your business could be affected. And how many people have lost jobs because of those outbursts they weren't aware of being triggered into. So,
right.
Yeah,
that's right. And a lot of times it's easier to see a lack of emotional intelligence than it is to see emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
and so the thing that I like to ask people that are not super familiar with the concept of emotional health or emotional intelligence is, have you ever had an experience with poor leadership?
Oh yeah.
Right. And 99% of people have probably had some sort of experience with poor leadership. Well, my guesstimate is the vast majority of those poor leadership examples is a reflection of some sort of emotional dysfunction in that person's life.
Oh, yes. Yes. And even on the flip side of that coin, like, are all your bosses or supervisors horrible supervisors? And if the answer is yes, that in a sense is a reflection into ourselves. Like, why is it every single boss I work for is horrible? Were they horrible when I did the interview and I was going into that brand new job? No. Oh, but at some point within a year or two, I think my boss is the worst thing ever. Well, there's something consistent on my part that's coming to that conclusion. What is that? And how do I get past that? And that, but you got to acknowledge it first, right? That's the first step that you talked about. You got to acknowledge that problem is there so that you can go into the next piece, which is to tackle that problem and address what is the appropriate response to this, which I'm kind of jumping ahead because I was going to ask you, what are some practical steps there to recognize where am I right now? Why am I reacting like this? So then, let's say we do acknowledge our feelings, our emotions that are being triggered. What do we do next with that?
Okay, so I'm gonna back you up just a little bit because most people have to do the first step of awareness. They've got to increase their awareness.
Yeah.
Most people are not aware of how they're feeling. Some are, and some are to a degree. But in terms of high self-awareness, I do executive coaching for a living. So I work with a lot of leaders, big companies, big leaders, and in the military and stuff. And that is probably the number one thing that is lacking in many leaders, in most leaders, I would argue, is self-awareness. And when you come across a leader who is not self-aware, again, that is a good indicator of potentially poor leadership because of the decision-making process, again, without having that self-awareness. So the first thing that I recommend to people is start working on your self-awareness. So how do you do that? There's an app that I use it for myself and I recommend it for my coaching clients. And it's an app called Mood Meter, the Mood Meter app. And it's not my app. I don't get a piece of the juice. I have no idea whose it is, but I use it. I use it for with all my leaders and it is fire. Very simple. It's cost 99 cents on the App Store and it takes literally 15 to 20 seconds to fill out. It asks you two questions. What are you feeling? And what are the causes of that feeling, or where did that feeling come from? Why are you feeling that way? And it's literally takes 20, 30 seconds to fill that out. And it's a really neat app. And I love where technology and emotional intelligence can kind of come together and create some neat tools and systems. So what I recommend to people is, how do you begin a new habit? Attach it to a habit you've already got. A few ways that I recommend leaders begin this new habit of using and filling out this Mood Meter app a few times, 3 to 5 times a week. And if you can do it a couple times a day too, that's even better, because then the other thing too that's cool about the Mood Meter app is that it starts to develop data. It creates data on when you filled out this particular emotion. And so now it does charts and graphs with, okay, hey, Jerry, it looks like in the mornings, you kind of have a number of unpleasant emotions in the mornings. what's going on? Are you sleeping enough? That you can start to look at trends and patterns and stuff. But what I recommend is when starting a new habit, again, attach it to a habit. So multiple ways to do that. One idea that I give to leaders is we eat typically 2 to 3 times a day. Before you eat, make that a positive trigger. Before you put something in your mouth, you got to check in with yourself really quick and fill out that mood meter app. That's one idea to begin that new habit of filling out your mood meter app and just checking in. The second idea that I give to leaders is a lot of leaders have meetings throughout the day. Before you walk into any meeting, take 20 seconds, fill out that mood meter app, just check in emotionally so that you don't bring in unwanted emotions into a meeting that could potentially sabotage that meeting. So it's a nice little checkup with yourself before you walk into that meeting. That's another idea. The third idea that I recommend to leaders is, and again, I just have them pick whichever one of these 3 options fits them the best, is when as soon as your butt hits the car, right? So if you go into to a job and your butt hits that car after you walk out of the house, you finish breakfast, as soon as your butt hits the car, before you put the key into the ignition, check in with yourself real quick. How are you doing? Or before you get out of your car and walk into your place of employment, fill that out real quick. And then the other time is as soon as you pull into the driveway, before you walk into the house, check in with yourself real quick. Again, so you don't bring in any unwanted or unnecessary emotional energy that is unpleasant into your home, and now you impact your home environment with any unpleasant, emotions. That kind of.
So this isn't just a log of how I'm feeling right now. This can actually influence a shift in your mood because now you're cognizant of it, and you're like, okay, I don't want to bring that inside.
That's exactly right. Absolutely. So it helps to increase both self-awareness and also begins to, as your awareness increases, it can also help begin working on the self-management piece too.
Nice. So for anybody out there, if you're thinking, yeah, dollar doesn't buy you much these days because of inflation, this dollar will actually change your life if you get it and apply it and leverage triggers or habits you already have to also include this quick little task. I love that. Now you do trainings and workshops for corporations, companies, businesses. What does that look like? What does that entail? Talk us through that.
Yeah, great. That's a great question. So I've got access. I'm certified in it's called Emotional Intelligence 2.0 EQI 2.0 assessment. And it's a scientific psychometric assessment that I call it your emotional before photo. So it gives you a snapshot of where you're at in 15 different areas of emotional intelligence. And then based on how that leader assesses on their before photo of their emotional intelligence, then I can build a coaching program. That's kind of the one-on-one. So, but what I'll do for a company is, for those leaders that want that assessment, then I'll have them take those assessments, and then I will come at the beginning of the day with those assessments in my hand, and I'll give them the first part of the day a workshop on how to read the assessment. What does the assessment mean? What are the 15 different areas or subscales of emotional intelligence that this assessment assesses you in? And then once then we'll take a little break, and then I give everyone their assessment after that break. And of course, there's a couple of disclaimers that I give them because it's very sobering for a lot of leaders to receive these assessments, right? Because a lot of them, right there, a lot of the folks I work with are senior leaders, right? So these are not underachievers. These are the majority of the people I work with are high achievers, overachievers. And so they have not sucked in anything for many, many years, at least to their understanding or awareness, right? And so they get back their EQ assessment, this scientific psychometric assessment, like, oh, snap, they've got, in many cases, some glaring areas, a lack of emotional intelligence in some of these 15 different areas that can be very sobering. So, and then of course I give tools and practical application for how to start growing these different areas of emotional intelligence. So that's kind of what a workshop looks like. And then we'll even go into what is this particular team, right? If it's a team of leaders, what are some areas of emotional intelligence of those 15 different areas that this team needs to adopt and use as a team? What are the top 3 areas? What are the bottom 3 areas of emotional intelligence that maybe because of the nature, the roles, responsibilities of this team, they don't need of those 3 areas, right? So that they can focus their time and effort.
Nice. And what kind of like action plan do they come out with? Like, I guess what skills do they bring out of that? Knowing who they are, what kind of triggers them, how it fits in with other folks. Like what do they do with it on a day-to-day after they're done with working with you in that session?
Yeah, great question. So it depends on which are their top 2 or 3 areas of emotional intelligence they have to work on. I'm going to break these down here, and I'm looking at my slide here. So if you see me on YouTube looking away, that's what I'm looking at. So the 5 main areas of emotional intelligence of my particular model that I am certified in. There's tons of different emotional intelligence models out there. But this particular one that I have access to is self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal, decision-making, and stress management. Those are the 5 main areas. And then each of those 5 main areas is broken down into 3 sub areas. So if, for example, a team, a leadership team needs to work on interpersonal, then we are going to hone and refine and come up with 2 or 3 action steps that leadership team can all work on individually and collectively to grow and develop the interpersonal area of emotional intelligence that they need to develop.
Yeah.
Maybe it's for another leadership team, maybe it's stress management. Maybe because it's a high pressure, high stress environment for that leadership team, then we're going to come up with 2 or 3 different exercises, action steps that they can work on to grow and develop their stress management skills. So it just kind of depends on which of those 5 main areas that they're wanting or needing to work on.
Nice. I noticed you kept the count to like less than 3 or less. Kind of the rule of 3, right? Like if you have 7 goals or 20, your chances of accomplishing those are way lower than if you have 2 or 3 laser focused approaches. Awesome. So like if people want to reach out to you and say, all right, I want this Noble guy to help fix my company because we don't know how to get along. How do folks find Noble Gibbens?
So yeah, great question. It's so funny you said that because I just had an HR lady reach out to me. I've got a survey, a pre-coaching or pre-consulting kind of questionnaire. And it was literally, she's an HR lady and there's a lot of dysfunction and a lot of tension between some of the different teams within her company. And she's like, dude, can you help a sister out kind of thing? So eqgangster.com is the website. And there's a number of different tabs on eqgangster.com where there's different ways to connect with me and work with me and stuff. That would be where I would send folks to, is eqgangster.com.
Nice. Yeah. And don't let the title fool you guys. I mean, EQ Gangster. Yes, like right now I'm looking at somebody who's tatted up. He's got a beard. He looks like he's in a biker gang, but he's like a gentle giant. He's in touch with his emotions. He's got that self-awareness, helps others gain that self-awareness. So you definitely want to check out not just eqgangster.com, but go on podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You're on YouTube as well. And check out the show, because not only does he share his insights, but he brings other experts in to share their stories, to share their expertise around the topic of emotional intelligence. Any final words of wisdom for our audience before we go?
Yes, Jerry. So first of all, thank you for having me. This has been awesome. You rock like ZZ Top, bro. Or New Kids on the Block, whichever.
Nice.
So
throw my mullet back.
That's right. A handful of quotes I like to share with folks. One is, emotionally healthy people help heal other people emotionally. Emotionally healthy people help heal other people emotionally. Number 2, emotionally healthy leaders create emotionally healthy cultures and organizations which maximize and optimize outcomes and results. The third thing I say is, if you don't deal with your emotional issues, your friends, family, coworkers, and colleagues will be forced to.
Wow. Man, powerful. That's why I let folks have their final words of wisdom. Noble, 1, glad that we got to catch up. 2, great to have you on the show.
Thank you, brother. This has been awesome, man. Totally appreciate it, bro.